All right, the format for this meeting is a filmed speaker meeting for prison TV to carry the message and hope and recovery to the incarcerated prisons throughout the United States. Tonight we got a special guest. Come up and tell his story, please.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Gary. My name is Estil. I am a recovered drug addict.
Estil.
Should I sit, stand? All right. My sobriety date is May 8th of 2004. My sponsor's name is Casey O'Neill. My home group's the North Phoenix Tuesday Night Men's Stag Group of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm of service to an organization called 5A, where we house, feed, and clothe over 100 drug addicts and alcoholics every day. And I've got several men in the steps currently. Tried to get sober here one time, a long time ago. I wasn't ready. I have two children. I have a 4-year-old and a 22-month-old girl, both girls. Night before last, I was putting my littlest one down. So I take her in her room, and we have a book that we read. We read lots of books, but one that we read most frequently. And she's learning to talk, so she's saying some of the words with me, which kind of chokes me up because, I love being a dad, and it's really sweet that she's like trying to catch on. And then I have a lullaby I sing her, and as I'm singing the song to her, she's hitting like the rhyming words. And I try to stop myself from crying too hard. Because when I was her age, I was in foster care. I was born to actively using alcoholics. Didn't have enough space in their lives to raise their son. And when I hold my daughter and I look at her, it's this juxtaposition of where my life's come from and what I can do differently with my family. So I was born, left in foster care, and later adopted out of a place called Clinton, Missouri. Most people don't know where that is. I think there's only about 4,000 people that live there now in 2019. So it's a very, very small place. I was adopted at a young age, brought here to Arizona, and I grew up here in Phoenix. I had a pretty good childhood. I'll spare you many of the details, but I'll tell you what, man, I like getting fucked up every day. It started as a kid. I got into booze with some of my other friends. I think the first time I ever was intoxicated from drinking, I was about 8. And I liked it, man. I don't know what else to say. While there may be things in my life that would be considered traumatic, I scored pretty high on an ACE test. But I got to tell you, as a young person growing up in Phoenix, skateboarding, I'm a natural extrovert. I had plenty of friends. I didn't feel all that out of place, to be honest. I wasn't drinking for any reason, at least not consciously, other than I just like it. I like getting faded, guys. I don't know how else to say it. That's how it started. Sneaking booze, sneaking beers. By the time I was a teenager, getting into weed and hallucinogens. And by the time I was 16, I discovered crystal meth. And we're talking in the 90s. Right? I'm getting older. I'm 42 now. So we're talking in the 90s, getting yellow bathtub crank that was still wet in the bag. Yeah, the good old days. And man, my life got turned upside down. I dropped out of high school. Didn't graduate. I went to Arcadia. I didn't graduate there. And I found myself time after time in situations that were worse than I had ever pictured I'd be in, and asking myself if I'd had enough. Look, for a lot of years, people gave me very well-intentioned, very well-meaning warnings. Anybody here ever get a warning? They sit you down, have the come to Jesus talk, like, listen, we really think the world of you, but we're changing the locks today. Don't come here anymore. Yeah, I had a lot of those talks over the years, and none of it, I didn't digest any of that. I couldn't hear that. I couldn't understand why they thought what I was doing to myself was impacting them. be it parents, teachers, probation officers, whatever, relationships. I gotta tell you, I found myself time after time on strange mornings after long 4, 5 night runs, thinking to myself, man, this isn't what I intended to do. I'll tell you a couple of them. I was living homeless in San Diego, and I've been up 4 or 5 nights, super paranoid, and went inland because the sun was coming up. I can't go out in the daylight, right? I like to stay indoors, stay under cover. I like to be seen. I like to float in the shadows. And as the sun's coming up, I've been dodging the FBI or the Invisible Bureau of Investigation or whoever's following me. Somebody's following me and they're close, right? That feeling of impending doom when they're just going to get you any minute. And you're just like, so much anxiety. I went inland a couple of miles and I went into this apartment. I know these people. Got this, and I mean, it's a hole in the wall above a garage. Go up in there, the door's open. I lock the door. It's like 7 a.m. Go in their bathroom, lock that door. I'm hitting the meth pipe, looking out the tiny little window, and I'm waiting for the enemy to descend upon me. And I catch a glimpse of myself in the mirror. And I'll spare you the details of what I look like, but it was bad. I'm about 205, I was like 120, picked out from head to toe, just bad, open sores and all that. And not just that, I haven't talked to my family in over a year. I sleep outside most of the time. I hustle tourists on the boardwalk to get enough money to buy dope. I don't have any real friends. The people that I used to party with when I was, in high school, they were all going to college and going to trade school and going on to live life. And I wasn't partying, I was dying. And I thought to myself, man, this has got to stop. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm not going to do this ever again, in fact. And that firm resolution kept me sober for 2 days. And I found myself in the same situation 2 years later. San Bernardino, California. Anybody ever go out there? Meth out there is pretty good. So I'm living in San Bernardino and in a trap house, like 15 other people, my closest friends. And guy that was living with us he'd just done something really bad. And there's plenty of dope, and there's food in the fridge, and I found myself in one of these moments again, this isn't what I don't know what my life was supposed to be, and the longer I used, and the longer I spent isolated, the further I got from any type of articulated version of what I thought my life was supposed to be, but I would repeatedly come upon these moments where I just knew I was not living where I was supposed to be living, the way I was supposed to be living. I wasn't doing what I should be doing. I wasn't even sure what I should be doing. I just knew I wasn't it. I don't know if that makes sense. My intuition was pretty foggy, but it was strong enough to be like, my GPS it's like, U-turn, reroute. And I'm like, And I think, for me, that's where spirituality begins. I've been ignoring my conscience for a lot of years. I got sober at 26, so I did that for 7 more years. After 21, 6 more years, whatever, 5. I got sober. I stayed sober 5 or 6 nights on the streets, trying to get in this place. Came in here. These folks were super kind to me. They provided me with everything they're providing you with. That's roof over your head, clean toothbrush, clothes to wear. I don't know how well they feed you, but they fed us like horses back then. And they provided meetings. There were guys that came in offering sponsorship. Not the $2 answer. I mean the $1 million solution to everything that was rotting in my life from the inside out was being handed to me in this place, and I couldn't hear it. I couldn't see it. I worked all day, hanging panties. You guys still call it that? Yeah. Okay. Just checking. It's been like 15 years, so. Worked all day. I was only here for a few days, so that was definitely the only job they were going to give me. And I had gotten a phone number from a guy that said he was going to be my sponsor. This is This is like pre-iPhone by like 4 years. So cell phones are like hardly a thing. There was a house phone that you couldn't use in the first 30 days back then. I know all that's changed a long time now. I went upstairs to take a shower, and the reality of my life, sobriety was, I was like 9 days sober, been here for 3 nights. And at 9 days of sobriety, just breathing while being sober was too overwhelming, and I could not handle it. I hadn't cried in over a decade. My brother, he's my uncle by blood, but I have an effed up family system, I don't know what to tell you. My brother died a couple years before that, and I'd never cried once, and I cared deeply about my brother. Never cried, I couldn't feel anything. And I'm in here, in this place, 9 days of sobriety, taking a shower, and out of nowhere, the tears just come out. Like ugly crying, snot coming out, and I'm just like, all this pain is just welling up from inside me because I'm starting to feel. And it's like flipping on your internet connection or your phone after not having it on for a decade, and it's just like notifications of pain and misery just forever. And it's just too much. I couldn't process it, I couldn't digest it. And I packed my worldly possessions, which fit in one backpack, and I started marching out the front door. There was a guy here who was a client the same time I was. His name's Chris King. He's now the director. He's the executive director at one of the places, at the place that I later got sober at 5A. But he was a client too, and he'd only been here like 10 days longer than me. And he was standing right here, and he tried to stop me on the way out. And he just looked at me and said, "Man, there's nothing out there for you." And I just pushed him aside, walked out the door. I walked up to 32nd Street in McDowell. I know this old biker chick, knocked on the door. She let me in. She put a half gram in a bowl. I started smoking, and all that anxiety and all that remorse and all that guilt and all that pain, it didn't disappear, but it dissipated. It kind of went down like this. And I was okay. The dope worked again. That's what I needed to do. And I hadn't put it together maybe until then. But that's why I do drugs. I'm telling you, I don't think that's how it started. I don't have any recollection of like crying over opening a bottle when I was like 12. I don't remember that at all. But I very distinctly remember feeling borderline suicidal, walking from here to 32nd Street McDowell, and the moment I started smoking speed, I was okay. Somewhere along the line, somewhere over those years of daily drinking and using, it turned into that. I get loaded because I can't stand being alive sober. I can't stand it. I hate sobriety. I hate God. I hate all of you. I'm not even sure if there is a God. But if there is, pretty sure he's not on my side. And I got picked up on ASU campus riding a children's mountain bike, looking for a better bicycle to steal, because I'm a thug. Right? My game is strong. And when I was in Durango jail, man, they had AA meetings and they had CA meetings, and these guys, it's like God was leaving this breadcrumb trail for me to pick up. And as often as I was willing to pick one up, he'd leave another one. It's like he left. You ever see that movie from the 90s, The Game, with Michael Douglas?
Yeah.
In the beginning when he gives them the ground rules, it's kind of how I felt. It was this eerie feeling, which I'm comfortable with, right? Because I'm super paranoid and I'm used to thinking about weird existential stuff. So I just felt like, you never know where you're going to find a key, and you never know how you're going to have to use it. But I just kept picking them up, and I would find the lock it fits in. And it just kept going like that. It was really weird. They had an AA meeting. These guys came in and they talked about drinking the way I drink and wrecking their lives the way I'd wrecked mine. And then they started talking about God, and I was like, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this stupid God stuff. And I decided I wasn't going to go back. I'm not going back to AA. AA sucks. But over the course of the next couple of days, I couldn't shake the image of these men's faces out of my head. It wasn't even what they said. It was just the vibe they put off. It was their energy. They were cool, calm, collect. They were confident. They had a lot that I didn't. And a few days later, they made an announcement for a CA meeting. And like many a newcomer that swears off meetings, I went. And same exact thing happened. 2 different guys, same vibe. Cool, calm, collect. And this guy talked about staying sober for months without working steps, without finding God, without doing any of that stuff, just staying sober. And becoming so miserable in sobriety that he'd rather kill himself. My ears perked up. I thought, it's interesting. And the more he talked about it, from his experience, he would describe the cycle of burning everything to the ground, drugs and alcohol, getting sober because that's what was clearly indicated, and then as soon as he started staying sober, he started getting more miserable, and as time went on, things got worse internally. As his outside circumstances would improve, his internal condition would degrade rapidly until he would come to the point of the brink of suicide, and he was either going to kill himself or drink. And he would drink, or he would smoke crack. And he talked about it in detail over and over, and I sank in my chair because that's what's going on with me. I can't stay sober because I hate myself, and I hate all of you. I don't see what the point of living is. And drugs and alcohol make that a little less real, and I can get busy doing whatever nonsense. It's not productive, believe me. And this guy called that alcoholism. And I thought at 26, almost 27, after being in and out of jail, after being in and out of programs like this, after living on the streets, drinking out of sinks, sleeping on rooftops, bathing in swimming pools, being separated from my family, being incarcerated over the holidays, after all of this stuff, I thought for the first time, I might be an alcoholic. And I asked those guys after the meeting, this is a big leap of faith for me, because I don't trust people. I don't have faith in anything. I'm hyper skeptical of everyone. And these guys could be AA guys, they could be the FBI. I'm really not sure. But I took a chance, and I said after the meeting, I said, listen guys, if this is for real, I'm gonna need some help, because I don't know where to go. I don't know how to find meetings. I don't know how to find you. And the only people that will answer my phone calls don't speak English. Anybody? It's a drug dealer joke. My boy Martine will answer the phone because I pay cash. If I don't have cash, I gotta steal bicycles, you feel me? You don't take bicycles. Anyway, they said, you know what? If you don't have a safe place to go, we'll help you find a halfway house. We'll take you to some meetings. You start going to some meetings, you pick one to be your home group, you get a service commitment, you go through the 12 steps with your sponsor, and then we're gonna show you how to sponsor other guys. Not understanding fully the implications of what I was agreeing to, I said, okay. And I ended up checking into the Solution halfway house in Central Phoenix. It's not there anymore. With a backpack with one change of dirty clothes, a pair of bolt cutters, and a kitchen knife. And they told me, you're going to have to go to 90 meetings in 90 days, you're going to have a sponsor, a home group. They told me all the same stuff. And I'm nodding my head and I'm thinking, there's no way I'm going to make it 90 days. There's no way. Had a 2-year probation term, felony probation. And in order for me to not go to prison, I was going to have to complete this successfully. I was in drug court. Anybody here on drug court or been in it? Not a single ticket. We got one. Drug court's special. That's a tough one. Drug court's nothing nice. Anyway, so I think to myself, well, I'll just do this AA sobriety thing until I get off probation. I mean, I can't, they're going to catch me using. I don't want to go to prison, so I'll just do what they're doing, and I'll fly under the radar, and after 2 years, it'll be okay. And then it hits me, right? 2 years? I'm like, dude, I don't know if I'm going to stay sober through the night. I thought, oh God, I'm going to have to do everything these AA people are doing if this is going to work. So my plan was never to get sober permanently. My plan was not like, dude, I'm in AA now, this is rad. It wasn't like, let's go into sober living, let's go change the world, let's help people. It isn't not part of my plan at all. I was grumbling the same things probably most of you and most people that join recovery were grumbling when we walked in the first or the third or the 15th time. It was like, fucking AA. I guess I gotta go to a meeting today. I guess I gotta get a sponsor. This is stupid, this sucks. And you know what? I got a sponsor, and against my own best thinking, I worked all 12 steps of that sponsor. I started sponsoring other guys, and the strangest thing happened. As I worked the steps, as I worked a normal job, as I started to show up to life the way other people do, at least kind of crappy version of that, the breadcrumb trail just kept getting faster. I kept having these little God shots, these little aha moments. I'd find more keys, and then I'd find the locks that they fit in, and it was, doors were opening and things were changing, and I really wasn't able to put my finger on how or why, but things were improving. And at about 6 months of sobriety, I was taking some guys through the steps down at TLC on Roosevelt, and I'm wearing secondhand clothes. I move furniture for $8 an hour, 6 days a week. I don't got any money, right? I ride the bus. I wear used clothes, and I'm taking my time on Sunday to work with new guys to carry a message I barely am retaining. And something happened, and the clouds didn't part. God didn't speak to me through a stranger. It was much more subtle than that. I'll try to explain it. When I was little and starting to veer off towards the dark side, we'll call it somewhere around 8, I started to get this knot in my stomach. You guys know about the knot? When you know it ain't right, what you're doing ain't right, and whatever you did that wasn't ain't right's coming for you. That feeling grew into a tumor that wrapped itself around my life and the life of anybody who was dumb enough or careless enough to love me. I drowned everyone that was near me because I couldn't stay afloat. Until people that had enough self-respect went like this. It was a low roar of misery, depression, blame, remorse, anger, and riding the city bus on a Sunday, it just vanished. It just stopped. The noise, the screaming, the sick, violent sadness in my head just stopped one day. Nothing happened out here. Nobody said anything profound from a podium. The words didn't leap off the page at me. I just stopped feeling like I wanted to die being sober. I felt okay. Just like, hey, whatever. Want to get a sandwich? You know? I went from like crippling bankruptcy to just being broke. It was really, really life-changing, life-altering transition for me. I thought I'd live my life and die with that feeling. I didn't know it could go away. It did. It just vanished into thin air. Called my sponsor, all excited, and he's like, "That's great. Those guys at TLC probably ain't gonna stay sober. You better go get some more." I'm like, "Way to shoot down my dreams, buddy." But the truth is, he knew that what I was onto was helping other people, and it was getting me connected to a power greater than myself. And he knew that I had to keep that connection going. I had to keep building that momentum. I had to keep picking up the breadcrumb trail. And so I did, man. I got involved in H&I. I started sponsoring lots of guys. I started studying that big book. I started going to lots of big book studies. That way I knew what the heck I was talking about when I was talking to these new guys, right? And the weirdest thing happened when I started taking recovery seriously. My life exploded. All of a sudden I had enough money to move out of the halfway house and get my own apartment. All of a sudden I didn't have to ride the bus. I could afford a car. All of a sudden I didn't move furniture. I had a job in an office like a normal person. You know what I'm saying? Things were getting better. Not all normal people work in offices. But I went from being this barnacle of society, basically, to being like a tax-paying citizen. A normal dude with an opinion and that obeys the laws. Super weird. It gets weirder. I stay sober like 2 years, and I get off probation. Actually, let's rewind just a little bit. At a year's sobriety, my brother Jack, he was a pastor. He left Phoenix and moved to Detroit when I was about 12. Got married, had some kids, started this church, and I became a drug addict living on the streets, and he never helped me once. He never called to check on me. When I called him, he would hang up. So I had resentment, deep, deep resentment for him. And at about a year's sobriety, my dad, this is my adopted father, right? He's my grandfather. He was dying of Parkinson's disease, and Jack came out from Detroit to see him. And the degenerate black sheep of the family, me, I'm sober a year, so it's like, hey, I'm coming, I'm hanging out now. Mom said I could be here. You know, I'm 27, and I see my brother, and we're going into this restaurant, and I stop him and I say, hey Jack, I gotta say something to you. And he's like, you don't have to say anything. And I'm like, listen, dude, I do. As you may or may not know, I am now a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I have to try to right the wrongs of my past, or I'm sure to drink and use drugs again. Man, I don't want to go back. I don't want to go back to where I was. And he kind of looked at me like, okay. I said, listen, man, I've hated your guts for a long, long time. And it's not because you did anything wrong, man. It's because you're everything I'm not. Mom and Dad have always been proud of you. You've always carried the weight of the world on your shoulders and done it with style, man. And I've been out here leeching off everyone, embarrassing our parents, making Mom sick with grief. I know I can't fix that, but if there's anything I can do to start to fix it, you just name it and you got it. And he looked at me and he said, listen, man, Dad's gonna go soon, and I can't be here for Mom. Once you be here for Mom, you say you're gonna stay sober and you're gonna do this for real, once you be here for our mother. And I said, yeah, man, you got it. He died of a heart attack 2 weeks later. First time I'd spoken to him in over 12 years. Never had a chance to talk to him again. So he was correct. That was in June. It was in June of 2005. So by Christmas, December 22nd, 2005, my dad went. And I saw my dad every day those last many months of his life. And in those days, I changed his diapers, and I bathed him, and I shaved his face, and I prayed with him. And I prayed for him, and I talked to him, and I listened to him, and when he didn't know who I was anymore, I just sat with him. And when he went, not only was I allowed to be at his funeral, my mother, too stricken with grief, asked me to speak on her behalf, and I did. And men from the AA groups that I'm part of showed up to support me, and they brought flowers. And they put their arms around me to let me know that I was okay. And I was going to be okay as long as I stuck with them. And after a few months of learning how to manage grief, I realized that I was probably going to stay sober through anything, as long as I kept God and AA first. The very next thought was, oh crap, I got to figure out what I want to be when I grow up. Because I hadn't planned on living past 30. That may be a little grandiose, but I don't know what to tell you. I was a 20-something-year-old drug addict. I didn't think very far ahead. I didn't think things through. So I started working on a plan for what my life could look like. Maybe, if I were to put any intention into it, what would my life look like? Yeah, it was shortly after that, man. I got off probation. And my plan skittered across my little brain for just a moment. It's like, I could go drink now. I don't care about that. I don't want to drink. Do I miss smoking weed? Kind of. I mean, in theory. Theoretically, I kind of miss smoking weed, but I'm not a pothead. Dude, I was in this facility, like day 2, and some guy, one of the staff members asked me, he goes, so you gonna stick with this thing after you graduate? You gonna stay sober? And I was like, no, man, I'm probably gonna just smoke pot. He goes, oh, you're gonna do the marijuana maintenance program. I go, no, you're not listening. I'm not gonna do any program. I'm gonna just smoke pot. He goes, no. You're not hearing me. To just smoke, when drug addicts think they're gonna just smoke pot and not do other drugs or drink, that never works out. Lots of guys try that. We call it the marijuana maintenance program. And I was like, that's a thing? I'm pretty sure I just thought of it right now. pretty sure I am the patent holder. He's like, no, my cousin been trying that for years. He's like, I've been trying it for a few years. Doesn't work. Yeah, that skittered across my brain at a couple of years sober, got off probation, and I thought, man, I'm not going back to that life. That life sucked. I'm driving a car, I sleep in air conditioning, I got food in the fridge, I got love in my heart, I've been laughing on a regular basis. My mom wants me around. Yeah, fuck that old life, man, I don't want it. I don't want it, and my life has just kept going. Now, it hasn't all been, I don't want to be too dirty in here, I'm sorry guys. My life hasn't all been orgasms and sports cars. Although there's been plenty of good fun in my life. There's been plenty of sad stuff too. People still die. You still got to pay taxes. Really, I mean, people go broke in sobriety. That happens. It happens. People get divorced in sobriety. People's children die. Their parents die. But the Big Book doesn't promise that bad things aren't going to happen. The Big Book promises. The Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, Crystal Meth Anonymous, our 12-step fellowships. What I'm promising you, same thing they promised me, is that if you take this way of life and adopt it for your own, the way you would a child, and I mean that, adopt it like you would a child. Every moment of every day, it's your concern. You adopt this way of life as your own, you're gonna have the tools, the strength from deep down within that you didn't know you had, the fellowship and friendship around you, the support you need in every direction, even invisible support that you may not yet believe in, to face anything. I didn't pick that up in my light reading. That's been my experience. I'm talking about blood and guts, living on the street, to living in the frickin' suburbs, driving a German sports car. Like, it's the truth, guys. I'm not kidding. It's my life I'm talking about. And not just mine, his, and hers, and his, and hundreds of other guys that we know by first and last name that we can introduce you to that live right here in the city. There is an amazing life out there. And again, it's not all sports cars and vacations, but there is that too. You get that stuff too. I got, I married this beautiful woman. She is not in recovery herself, doesn't need to be in recovery herself. I think that's the more important piece. She doesn't need to be in recovery. After being together 3 years, we got married, and my wife is one of those women. She is a nurturer. She is the type of woman that can take care of me. That's what I look for. I don't know if that's my mommy issues or what. I've always liked nurturing women, but she's like that. And shortly after marriage, she wants to start having children, raise a family. And so we start trying, and we have a miscarriage and can't seem to get pregnant. And time starts going on, which is weird to me, right? Like, I know dudes that had kids when they were like 16, totally on accident. I sponsor guys that have 5 different kids with 5 different moms, like totally by accident. I don't know how they just keep getting pregnant. Here we are, we're married, we're financially doing pretty good, we got money in the bank, and we're not having a baby. I don't know what this is about, and we see a fertility specialist, and he gives us some medications, and we get pregnant. Meanwhile, my mom is aging, right? She's my grandmother, she's in her 80s. We built a wonderful relationship. Wonderful. It was a brand new relationship, by the way. We rarely talked about the past except when I made my amends. I actually made a second amends to my mom. I made my initial amends, in my first few months of sobriety. When I was on the 9th step, I made my amends. But I got to tell you, when I was about 3 years sober, after I'd sponsored some guys and I'd buried a couple guys, and I'd learned to stand on my own 2 feet financially and kind of grown up a bit, she would call me to do these really menial tasks. My brother's 10 years older, never left home, he still lives there. And but she would call me to come over and change light bulbs and things like that, which is code for I just want to see my boy. And anytime she would call me and ask me to do something like that, I would yeah, Mom, I'll be right there. And I would rush over, and she just wants to see me. So I would do whatever thing she wanted me to do, and then we'd just sit around and talk. And it was one of those trips I came over to change a light bulb or something, and I sat down and I was talking to her, and I was just overwhelmed I was just overwhelmed with the conviction that I needed to make another amends. Even though I hadn't done anything wrong in the last 3 years, I just, the tears just came out, man. I just started crying. I said, Mom, I'm fucking sorry. I know I've made a proper amends, but I gotta tell you, from the bottom of my heart, I am ashamed of all the nights that you spent worrying about me and the tough decisions I forced you into. I just want you to know from the bottom of my heart, I am a different person now, and I feel horrible about the pain I caused you. And you know, we had this new relationship. It's like I met her for the first time. You know, I had a paradigm shift. For those of you that have not had a spiritual awakening or a psychic change yet, I can do a good comparison. How many of you here have taken really strong LSD? Show of hands. Don't worry, I won't tell the cops. All right, good. Having a spiritual awakening is a little like that. It's very specific, and it's very unique, and it's very distinct. Whenever I hear a guy like, I think I'm having a spiritual awakening, it's like, no, you're not. You're not. Don't worry. Just keep doing the work, buddy. When someone has one, it's 100%. It's undeniable. Once the change has taken place, you can undo it over time. You can get lazy and not stay spiritually fit. But once the experience has happened, it's an undeniable experience. This isn't woo-woo, light some incense, we'll drive to Sedona and go to the vortex. I'm talking about if you do enough of this work, and this is practical stuff, you do enough of this work, there is a high likelihood that your life will change from the inside out so dramatically, you will wonder how you stepped from one side of this invisible wall to the other, into this new life. It's literally like that. I stepped through that threshold and I was like, I used to live in there. I was like, I'm allowed to be here? And I just went a little farther. Every year, a little farther. And now I live in the suburbs, man. And I raise beautiful children, and I pay taxes. I even vote. I got a clean passport. I was just in China last month for no good reason. I was like there for a wedding. We have Norwegian friends, which is crazy in itself, that are getting married in Ningbo. And my wife's like, we need to go. And I'm like, I don't want to go to China. And she's like, when are we ever going to go to China again? When are we ever going to have a reason to go to China again? And I'm like, you're right. And we bought tickets and we went to China for 10 days. And I saw Shanghai and Beijing, and I went and stood on the Great Wall and did all that stuff. What I'm trying to give you is some perspective that it can change so much, and in directions that you probably haven't thought of yet. That's been my experience. I didn't want to go to China. I'm telling you, even 60 days ago, I didn't want to go to China. But I'm really glad I went. Street food is really good in Shanghai. Really good. And cheap. I've got a home group in London where I know the people by their first and last names and they know me. I've got a home group in Norway where I know the people, I know their first and last names and they know me. I've been all over the world, man, living my life, a new life, a life I didn't know that I could participate in at a creative level. Not just flying by the seat of my pants like, well, just go wherever the wind takes me. Like, I sit down with God in meditation. I ask for what the parameters are, and I ask how much intention can I put into this? God, this is what I want to bring to this experience of life. Please let me have this or something that you think is better. That's why I meditate constantly. And he grants me that. Beautiful thing. And I have a hard time describing it. My hope is that all of you will take the trip, man. You guys will drink. It's a little cultish, I'll give you that. But drink the Kool-Aid, guys. What do you got to lose, man? What do you got to lose? I work in treatment. I was talking to a 21-year-old kid. He came in, I don't know what he thought it was, but you could tell by the look on his face once he saw me and my buddies, it wasn't what he thought. And he was kind of like, okay. And we kind of ran it down to him, man, what it's going to look like for the next month, the next 3 months, the next 6 months. And I was like, dude, do it for a year. You'll hear lots of people in AA challenge you to do it for a year. Because here's the caveat. After a year, you want to go out and shoot dope or do whatever you're doing before? Feel free. We're a border state. There's plenty of it. It's cheap here. It's not like it. Dude, I've been sober 15 years. Dude, I bump into people that know where to get drugs every day. So it's not like it's not available to you. You can always go do that. You can always go run your life into the ground like a teenager, like a drunk teenager with their dad's car. If you want to, why not try this? We're not going to ask you for any money. We might ask you to do some really uncomfortable work, though. And it's funny when you're new, you're like, oh, they want me to do all this weird, uncomfortable stuff. And the truth is, we don't really care about you doing the uncomfortable stuff, except that it needs to get done so that you can be ready to go help the next guy. That's what we want. We want to fit you to be of maximum service to your fellows. Because if you don't, this dies. This whole thing, 85 years of beautiful legacy and tradition, one alcoholic working with another, it dies. Is it 84? 85? We're somewhere in there. 80. It's north of 80 years, guys. It's been a long time. 1935 is 2019. It's been 84 and a half years. God, my mom wanted us to get pregnant so bad and produce some little babies for her to play with. I'm the last male in my family, and my brothers, they all had girls. So my wife and I get pregnant. Pregnancy sticks. My wife is super stoked. My mom is pumped. And my mom's telling me, I know it's a boy. You know, how many of you guys are dads? You know, a few. You know, when your wife's pregnant, people are always telling you, oh, I know it's a boy, or I know it's a girl. You know, they think, no. My mom's one of those for sure. Oh, it's a boy. I know it's a boy. And God, she's due in June of 2014. And on January 17th of 2014, the beginning of the year, my wife and I sat in the ICU and we held my mom's hands as she took her last breath. I was holding her right next to me when she went. And in her last moments, I was able to kiss her face and tell her how much I loved her. And I thanked her for not giving up on me. And I thanked her for making the hard decisions. And I thanked her for being a good mom. Good mama, I always called her mama. And it hurt. It still hurts. But I knew that we were going to have this child, and we had a gender reveal party. That's a thing. And we had right. I come from the hood, bro. I don't know about all this stuff. So I'm learning what normal people that live in the suburbs do, one circumstance at a time. And there's a whole etiquette, there's a whole way of life out there. It's nice. And yeah, we block off whole streets at Halloween, and all the kids are safe. That's a thing. Anyway, we have a gender reveal party, and guess what? It's a boy. We're going to name him Shepard William Wallace. My dad's name was William. Pretty strong name, right? And on May 26th of 2014, my son was born, 8.5 months gestation, full term, no heartbeat. That happens sometimes. I didn't know that happened. I didn't think that was possible. I think I'd heard the term stillbirth maybe before, but I didn't know anybody that had happened to. And I certainly didn't know what it was like to have a house full of baby shit and come home with no baby. I didn't know what it was like to hold a dead child in my arms with my sobbing wife. That wasn't in the recovery plan. And I'll tell you something interesting. We were going to have a home birth. And I've got just enough time to tell you this story. So I'm 10 years sober when this happens, right? So me and God are clicked up, man. I got home groups, service commitments. I sponsor a legion of dudes. I got great line of sponsors that are ahead of me that I listen to and I take guidance from. I'm part of retreats, men's groups. I'm in this, bro. I'm a AA foot soldier if you haven't picked that up yet. I'm in this thing. Ask around, you'll find out. So I was in about as good a place as you could be spiritually to endure something like this. My wife and I realized that there's no heartbeat, and we were going to have a home birth, and our midwife comes to the house and she verifies there's no heartbeat. My wife and I are like panicked, crying, freaking out, And she says, I know this is the worst possible outcome, but I want you guys to hang on, because in the morning, we're going to go to a hospital and I want you to meet a special doctor to deliver your son with the dignity that he deserves. And we said, okay. And we did not sleep at all. And in the morning, we went down to this hospital, and they gave my wife Pitocin to induce labor. And as the labor started to pick up and we were getting close, this doctor came in. And she looked us both in the eyes with 100% confidence and said, is this your first child? And we said, yes. And she said, I have given birth 6 times and I have 3 living children. You can do this. And then she looked me right in the eyes and she said, are you sober? Right, the breadcrumb trail is right in front of me, shoving chunks of cake in my face. She said, are you sober? And I'm crying my eyes out. I'm like, yeah, I just celebrated 10 years this month. And she says, I just celebrated 8. You can stay sober through this. She delivered our child, and we held him, and my sponsor and his wife came down and held him, and my brother, and my wife's sisters. And we came home, and we barely left the house for a couple weeks. And when my wife and I could finally be apart for an hour, I didn't do what my brain wanted to do, which is run away. I didn't want to drink. I just didn't want to do what I just didn't want to experience what I was experiencing. When we could be apart for an hour, I got in my car and I drove to my home group at Crossroads East. I went to the Tuesday night North Phoenix Men's Stag, and I was a crying mess. And I went and I hung out with my sponsor and my friends. And I was in pain with them. And they supported me. And in my misery, I'm literally bawling my eyes out. My sponsor, my 10-step buddy, like got their arms around me, and some newcomer, some idiot newcomer, like 18-year-old kid walks up to me, he's like, hey, is your name Estil? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, my halfway house manager says you would be a good sponsor. Can you sponsor me? And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, yeah, man, I'll sponsor you. I went to another meeting on Thursday, and the same exact thing happened to me. I took 19 men, strangers, through the steps between August and December of 2014. Just to give you some frame of reference, that's a lot. I don't recommend that to the guys I sponsor. That's a lot. But you know what? Those guys very well saved my life and my marriage. And because my life was spared and my marriage survived, we got pregnant again. And that same doctor, that special doctor, she delivered my next child, which was a girl. And she's a beautiful little girl. She's beautiful. She's 4 now. She speaks English really well. She even got a little bit of an attitude. She's amazing, an amazing little human being. And but she was an emergency C-section. I gotta tell you, when we struggled to get pregnant, I asked in all earnestness, in all sincerity, I prayed to my Creator and I said, please give us a baby boy, please. I want a baby boy so bad. And then we got pregnant the second time. I got a little more specific. And I said, God, I don't care if it's a boy, I don't care if it's a girl, I don't care if it's a Democrat or Republican, just give me a healthy baby to bring home and raise and love as our own. And it was an emergency C-section. At 8 months gestation, she had to stay in the NICU for 2 weeks. We lived at that hospital, man, until they let her come home. And then that doctor retired. And we got pregnant again, and my wife said, baby, I want to have this child outside of a hospital. I do not want to go to the hospital. Can we do it at a birthing center? Giving birth vaginally after a cesarean section is very difficult to do. The medical community frowns upon it. It's hard to get it done in a hospital. Most doctors won't do it. She found this place in Mesa. It's a birthing center. It's a wonderful place. They have wonderful midwives, and they did some assessments on her, said that they would be happy to do it, that they thought there would be no complications. And so when it was time, we went down about 10 p.m., and my wife was in labor for about 4 hours, and I caught that little girl with my bare hands. Took my shirt off and held my child close to my skin. 40 weeks and 2 days. He's overdue. Perfectly healthy. No medical intervention needed. I have something that's really empowering and a little terrifying to tell you. Prayer is not just when you kneel and address the Creator, whatever you call that. Every thought that goes through your mind is a prayer. Every single thought, every wish, every intention, every nonsensical bullshit thought that goes through your head is a prayer to the Father of all things. It's weird, right? If you can get your head around that, the potential that you guys have for your own lives is almost limitless. I mean, within the realm of physical practicality, it's almost limitless. So, I'm an entrepreneur. I've owned many businesses in my time I've been sober. Who knew? I was only fit to move furniture when I got sober. So I decided to open up a treatment center. I love recovery. I think I could pull it off. We borrow a bunch of money from an investor. We open up, and there's crickets, right? There's no clients. Nobody knows that we're open. Nobody knows us. And I call my doctor friend, right? The woman, the very special doctor that delivered my first 2 children. She's a big wig at a hospital. I say, hey, can you give me some intros to some people in the hospital, some social workers or something? Want to get the word out, see if we can get some clients in here. And she says, this is for your treatment center? I said, yeah. She says, you're open. I said, yeah, we got licensed a couple days ago. Ready to go. And she says, will you come get my son? He's detoxing in my house. He needs to get out of here. I said, yeah, I'll be right there. No insurance info, no nothing. Just jumped in the car. We picked him up. It's our very first client. That kid is still sober. He actually works for us now, which is kind of borderline weird. I see him in the office and I'm like, hey. I couldn't have written a script for my life that would have even compared to what I have today. It's not like God has his hands on these little moments. This is all his manifestation. And the more and more I can wake up to that realization, the more and more I can engage with it. Surrender is a very difficult thing for alcoholics to do, for a lot of people to do. But if you feel like you're pushing a rock up a hill all day, I'll tell you what, you're not in surrender. There's a music, there's a rhythm to this experience of life. And it's already been going on for ages, man. Don't try and make your own song. Listen up. Try and play along. Eventually, we might let you have a solo. Thanks for letting me share.
Yeah.